Hello everyone, and welcome to a new subscriber special. As is tradition, we usually do Yakuza-related tier lists here to celebrate some notable milestones, but today's list will be an extra special one. As the title would suggest, we'll be ranking every Receive You song that is currently available to us, and this is a topic that a number of people in the comments were hoping to see here. So I'd like to thank longtime viewer of the channel, Ivan Gambino, for being the first to bring it up, as well as everyone else who was thoughtful enough to suggest it since. Now, the music we'll cover will be layered beneath my speaking voice, as I believe that playing individual sections of each track would just prolong the video unnecessarily. Having said that, there will be a link in the description to a playlist featuring every Receive You song in the order in which they'll be covered here, if you're in need of a refresher. Tier-wise, we have S, A, B, and C, as I believe that there is no such thing as a D tier Receive You track. Lastly, my criteria for ranking these entries will pertain to a song's composition and the way it is utilized in a given game, which will include spoilers for a number of boss fights, so if you want to skip over some of them, check the timestamps in the top comment. With the introductions out of the way, let's finally begin the tier list. First up, we have the originator of both the Receive You namesake and the general song structure that reappears over the course of the series. This song was the first one to be finalized for the original Yakuza's OST, setting a blueprint for the atmosphere of the entire game. Sonically speaking, it's an incredibly bold track, relishing in its unrefined nature and industrial influences being front and center. Really, the importance of this song can't be overstated, and seeing as I've already covered it in an older subscriber special, I don't think there's anything else to add here. As far as its placement in this particular tier list goes, the original Receive You gets a strong A tier. An amazing song, but at the same time, one that was uniquely improved upon through its many future iterations, as we'll see later on. The next entry is Receive You, the Prototype. It is used during both of the Majima fights in the original Yakuza 1, the fight against him in OG Yakuza 2, and even the fight against him in Kiwami 2. Now, in this specific case, composition and surprise factor will take precedence in the placement over its utilization, as the Prototype is essentially just an alternate instrumental mix of the previous track on the list. While the fights themselves are amazing, and I am pretty well on record as being a huge Majima fan, the fact that we are already well acquainted with this song from having heard the version with vocals in Yakuza 1's intro prevents this song from going into S tier for me. It is a strong A tier, but from this point on, the position of the songs on the list will largely depend on how they improve on the core formula of the original Receive You. And speaking of, the next entry on the list is Receive You, the Remix. If there was one word I'd use to sum it up, it would be inconsistent. The remix tries to switch things up here and there, even showing signs of what would later become the tech trance arrangement from Yakuza 0, but it can't seem to decide on whether it wants to honor the original track or try to completely reinvent it. It feels like the overture of a concept album that just glues together different themes to foreshadow what would come later on in an album, something that sadly doesn't work for this particular remix. Everything you get from this track, you can already get from the original, just done more concisely. Also, if I remember correctly, this song was only used as the menu theme for the PS3 remaster of OG 1 and 2, so even its general utility suffers when compared to the rest of the list, which mostly consists of boss themes. So because of all of this, the remix will unfortunately go into C tier. Alright, next up, we have Receive You, Tech Trance Arrange, which many of you will surely remember as Kiryu's legend-style theme from Yakuza 0. This song is exactly what it needs to be. A brilliant reimagining and an incredibly unexpected one, stylistically speaking. When you consider just how rough and unrefined the legend style is, when compared to its other iterations in the series, you'd have expected the composers to opt for a much heavier take on the original, to channel the aggressive nature and energy behind the younger Kiryu. But no, instead they wound up making one of the strongest party themes to date. Plus, the more upbeat rhythm also fits the high-octane energy of 1980s Kamurocho, whereas the more somber, downbeat focus of the original song perfectly embodied the district in 2005. This song is just perfect, and I think we all remember just how rad, pun very much intended, it felt to unlock this style after grinding the real estate minigame for so many hours. This song is an easy S tier for me. And then on the flip side, we have Receive You, the subtype, which is Majima's legend style theme from the same game. Now, I appreciate the addition of the Mad Dog style. It's the most fun that Majima ever felt to play, personally speaking. But the song itself is one of the weakest ones out of all of the Receive Yous. It aims for a very bass-heavy approach with occasional electronic accents, but the core of the song is just too safe. One thing you'll notice as the list progresses is how, while the songs may have a similar structure and even the exact same chord progression in key sections, the way that they present them is vastly different from one version to the next. The only thing that differentiates the subtype from the rest is how it feels more groove-driven at times, almost like a Pantera song with less distortion, but it lacks the necessary impact that could elevate it from its over-reliance on the core Receive You formula. This song is still a B tier due to the context behind it, but yeah, a bit of an underwhelming one for me. Alright, what's next? Oh, Receive You Reborn, a song we technically never got in the West. It's the Japanese opening theme for Yakuza Kiwami, and it was also used during the Shimano fight at the docks. Funnily enough, this is yet another track that I've talked about in a previous tier list. So, to keep it short, the best thing about this track is that it offers a what-if scenario. The 2000s had very distinct sonic identities among the various genres of music that were at the forefront then. So the fact that Reborn goes for the type of riffing that you would hear from a band like Disturbed, but with more upbeat drums and a bunch of really tasteful J-rock embellishments, makes this yet another great evolution of the original song. Essentially like the tech trance arrange, but going in a completely different musical direction, and I personally adore that. Again, easy S tier track. Up next, we have Receive You, the Madtype, a song used as Majima's boss theme, or at least one of them in Yakuza Kiwami. Originally, I really liked this song, but after some time, I'd become so desensitized to it due to having been swarmed by Majima so frequently throughout my exploration. Now, granted, the fights we have with him could also feature songs like Flirt with a Bomb or Funk Goes On, but due to how over-reliant Kiwami is on the Majima Everywhere system, all of these themes will inevitably blend together, cause we've seen this fight 60 times by the point we finally hear the Madtype. So, as solid as the track is, it will lose out on its intended impact regardless. Much like with everything else in life, context is important. So, while this is far from being a good song, its utilization will bump it down to a B tier for the time. Still a pretty fun song though. Alright, next we have Receive and Stab You, Majima's theme in both of the fights we have with him in Yakuza 3. This is a really cool take on the core formula. Very menacing and very guitar heavy, which I appreciate quite a bit. It works really well with the unique nature and uncertainty behind Majima's behavior and portrayal in 3 as a whole. There isn't really that much to add here. It's simply a strong A tier track for me, and the fights where it was used were also really memorable, especially the one in Purgatory where Majima finally takes Kiryu's hand. A fitting callback to the end of the fight in Yakuza 2, and technically, it's the very last time you get to fight Majima as Kiryu in the series. While it is a sad thing in retrospect, these two definitely went out on a great note, in more ways than one. Next up, we have, oh boy, Receive and Bite You. S tier, S, like, okay, where the hell do I begin with this track? Whew, okay, first off, chaotic song. The keyboards are disgustingly prominent in the mix. They'll cut through absolutely anything, and that's exactly what this song needed. It's used in Yakuza 4 when you fight Majima as his then estranged Kyodai Saejima. The emotional impact and intensity leading into this fight was a lot to handle, especially with how Saejima was originally framed as a much darker breed of Yakuza, and how Majima was put in a position where one of his greatest regrets may have finally come back to bury him. And yet, even when you consider just how easy this fight can get, thanks to Saejima's Herculean spirit defaulting everything to an easy mode, the emotional impact is still very much present. Hell, the song in its own right immediately explodes with energy even without the context behind it, making it one of the finest iterations of Receive You to date. Phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. The track following it on the tier list is Receive You, the Ballad. Now, for anyone who may not know, this song was used in Yakuza 4 as one of the credit themes, and is yet another attempt at reimagining the original song in an unexpected way. As the name would suggest, it's a ballad, specifically an acoustically driven one with a prominent piano and clean guitar. The way it's composed actually reminds me of a lot of Duran Gray's ballads, for example a song like Glass Skin or Namame Kashiki Ansoku, which, considering my adoration for that band, is a huge positive. And the guitar solo in the middle, mesmerizing, ethereal, enchanting, every positive word in the book. To me, this is yet another easy S tier, and I'm really glad that the Receive You playlist reminded me of this song's existence, as any track bearing such a name that isn't a boss theme tends to be omitted from popular fan discourse and YouTube recommendations. But this song is genuinely worth your time, so please check it out. Moving on to Yakuza 5, we have the song Receive and Slash You, which is the theme to our fight with Majima on the rooftop. Now, boss-wise, this is probably the best Majima fight of the franchise, especially with the doppelganger phase. Again, even with someone as overpowered as Saejima at the helm, it still hits really hard. Having said that, the song itself isn't really S-tier material. It's everything that we've heard before, and the verses even draw a lot of influence from the instrumentation of Kenzan's version of Receive You, which we'll get to later on. This one too is A-tier worthy, simply because even a safe version of Receive You is cool in its own right. But the context elevates it massively, even with the confused nature of Yakuza 5's narrative. Now, interestingly enough, the next entry is a song that is known by two names. The community used to call it Receive and Turn You, but the official name wound up being Receive You, the Hyperactive, and it served as the boss theme for the legendary tag team we fought in Yakuza 7. Okay, so just conceptually, and in terms of hyping you up, this fight is absolutely brilliant. One of the coolest fights in the entire franchise, and the fact that it also served as a massive wall blocking your progress in classic RPG grind fashion is just icing on the cake. As a song though, Hyperactive is an A tier, and here's why. Like I said with the previous entry, it's about reimagining. It's about recontextualizing what we already know. There's only so many times that you can hear a largely familiar chord progression in a largely familiar BPM and still have it entice you as a music listener or composer. I realize that this may sound like I hate the song, but no, this is just me trying to justify not putting it in S tier. Cause as amazing as the Hyperactive is, it is largely a double down on stylistic choices that were exhibited in the past. Amazing choices in their own right, but repeated ones nonetheless. So I'll leave the song here for now. And then we have yet another song from Yakuza 7, once again known by different names. Since our community really gets attached to Yakuza's OST tracks, even before the actual OST drops, you'll often find some songs receiving temporary titles, by which we can recognize and recommend them to others. In this instance, we're talking about the tentatively titled Receive You version 7, officially known as Rolling Eyes Fall Down the Dragon Wall. It is the boss theme for the one and only Kiryu, and it is by far the most menacing boss theme in the mainline entries. You know how there are some boss themes that have you all hyped up for the encounter, and then there are others that just focus on the atmosphere of said encounter? Well, this theme falls into neither of these categories, cause it carves out a category of its own. Rolling Eyes is the theme you get when the game tells you, "You, my sir, are very much doomed. You're not winning this fight, even if you win it in-game, because Kiryu is insurmountable." And even though we fought him in the past, this is the first time where he gets a theme that adequately conveys the difference in skill and stature between you and him. The song is apocalyptic and genuinely terrifying at times, yet it still has moments of tranquility, and the core of what makes Receive You what it is persists from start to finish. Even if this technically isn't a Receive You song by name, it is in every other conceivable way, and it earned its placement in the S tier. Alright, next we... Okay, how do I explain this without getting demonetized? Waterfalls. Yeah, okay, look, I know this sounds disjointed, but the context behind it isn't making it easy for me in the slightest. The next track is called Tsu N De Receive You, and oddly enough, it isn't even tied to a fight with this game's Mad Dog iteration, either when we see him as Majima Gorohachi or as Shishido Baiken. Instead, this song is, for whatever reason, used in a precursor to the karaoke minigame of the franchise, which, in the context of Kenzan, takes the form of a rhythm minigame where you meditate underneath a waterfall. And the imagery tied to it is of the Ichizu samurai nature, if you catch my drift. So yeah, context-wise, really bloody unexpected. Composition-wise, strange, heavily electronic, and on the shorter side in terms of general length. All of these things make it exceptionally hard to place this song anywhere on the list, cause it's unlike any of the other Receive Yous. It may be a strong party anthem, but I'm still torn between appreciating its eccentricity and critiquing its abrupt ending, cause at 1.5 minutes of length, it just comes and goes. So it doesn't even cover as much ground as it should to establish a new musical identity in a lasting manner. Okay, maybe I'm just getting a bit too philosophical over a song that's tied to ancient Kiryu's lewd shower thoughts, so let's just give it a B tier for now and move on to the next track. Alright, Receive You the Archetype, you're on. The boss theme for the first encounter against Okita Soji, aka Ishin Majima. A really cool take on the original with a really cool boss fights to accompany. Frankly, there's a lot that can be said about this iteration of Majima and how this song perfectly embellishes his role in the narrative. But that would horribly derail this tier list, so I'll leave that for the inevitable Okita Soji character analysis in the future. As for the song itself, the addition of a wind instrument at the beginning is an amazing tone setter, and adding a prominent hi-hat rhythm on the offbeats makes this song feel like an avant-garde dance anthem at times. While the Archetype largely adheres to the conventional Receive You structure that we know all too well by now, it does just enough to make itself distinct, even from a purely musical perspective, so it will just barely miss out on the S tier. Admittedly, it focuses less on reimagining and more on reiterating on what these songs are known for, but it still manages to excel on its own terms through the attention to detail. The second Okita theme, on the other hand, is pretty weak by comparison. The song Receive and Doubt You plays at a pivotal point in the story, and to mirror the traitorous suspicions of the encounter, it draws on the more recognizable aspects of Receive You while twisting them into a more dramatic and haunting interpretation. At least, that's the impression I got at the start. But the longer the song plays, the more do its inconsistencies show. The addition of a wind instrument in the verses doesn't work as well as intended here, when you compare the melody it opts for with the chord progression that follows it. Then, when you hear the jump from the intro and verse sections into the pre-chorus and chorus, it feels like someone just copy-pasted a completely different take of Receive You into this mix and hoped that no one would notice. Now granted, these more modern-sounding bits did pave the way for tracks like the tech trance version in Zero, but they feel like abrupt tonal clashes here when you observe them in the context of Receive and Doubt You specifically. While it does have its moments, this song feels more like a jam session where the instrumentalists are still feeling things out and trying to see what will fit in the final product, as opposed to actually deliberately composing a track. So because of all of that, this song will unfortunately go into C tier. Okay, only 2 songs to go. First up, Receive You, North Star. Yes, just yes. The word yes is the most adequate description of this track, because it excels on so many different levels. As the name would suggest, this song appeared in Fist of the North Star, Lost Paradise, and it was used as one of the radio choices to accompany you as you drive throughout the wasteland. But that's not what's so brilliant about it. The Fist of the North Star anime had one of the most iconic openings ever, in the form of Ai wo Torimodose. And if you listen to the final segment of that opening, you'll see just where the inspiration for the epic power metal vocals in this version of Receive You actually came from. The fact we start with a classic high-pitched yeah is something that has been done so many times by now in metal to where you could very well call it old hat. But because it is used in a Fist of the North Star track, this contextualization actually undoes much of that familiarity. This is a series that has invented so many tropes that many of the greatest mangakas to date still adhere to. So while it may feel old hat to anyone experiencing the series today, it was groundbreaking for its time. So because of that, classic songwriting choices from the golden age of rock and metal don't feel like nostalgia bait here, but like a natural fit for a modern classic. Between the unique lyrics and vocal melodies that embellish the core, and the instrumentation being both an homage to the anime opening and metal greats like Judas Priest, this song immediately ascends to stardom. It's as manly and metal as Fist of the North Star itself, and seeing it come to fruition thanks to RGG's over-the-top ambitions is everything I could have hoped to see. Even though it may feel odd to give this much praise to a song that's basically a backing track in your drive around a dead environment, there's something incredibly uplifting about a song this epic following you in your traversal of a volatile world. It feels motivating, like you can do anything you set your mind to and feel awesome while doing it. Anyway, yeah, very high S tier if it wasn't obvious. And lastly, at least for the time being, we have yet another track from Lost Paradise, this one being the concisely titled Receive You, Piano. Now, considering how we've already had a ballad version of Receive You, the first question would be, how does this song differentiate itself? Well, for one thing, this track is of an entirely instrumental nature and is deliberately more subdued in its execution. The ballad from Yakuza 4 felt like a proper band experience, where everyone had a moment to shine and create an experience that would make a group of people feel as one. The piano version, on the other hand, focuses exclusively on one instrument and drives home a feeling of loneliness and finality. Rhythmically speaking, it is also a bit faster than the ballad, and the choice of notes makes it feel like you're listening to a music box playing a melody tied to memories of a time long gone. Even though it's a mere minute and a half in length, it drives home an intended point very quickly and succinctly. Yet, despite all of my praise, this song can't go into S tier. Why? Because it's basically this game's version of Yakuza 0's sad substory music, and when you know how beautifully absurd some of these substories can get, any song, no matter how touching, will forever be associated with the oddest of the lot. So due to the context behind it, the piano rendition will firmly reside in A tier. And that's it for this tier list. Now, I have it on good authority that Infinite Wealth will also have a Receive You style song present, but seeing as I intend to release this video 3 days before the game even drops, we'll just have to leave that as the subject of a tier list update in the future. Hell, maybe we'll make a low quality livestream out of it, covering topics from every tier list thus far. Who knows? Whatever the case may be, thank you for being here for yet another milestone. We're actually close to hitting 7,000 subscribers at this point, but there was a number of timing sensitive videos that I wanted to release before Infinite Wealth dropped, so apologies for the delay on this particular sub-special. If there are any other topics you would like to see, either in a tier list form or just an average discussion piece, shout it from the comments below. Once again, thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you again. So, until next time, take care of yourselves and have a great day. Cheers!